Third Wednesday of each month at 9:30 a.m. to Career Source, Citrus, Levy, Marion, and learn how they can help you.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Were you a fan of Hogan's Heroes? I loved Hogan's Heroes. Gosh, when I was a kid. So the name Bob Crane is like embedded in my brain. I even found one time not too long ago because I love YouTube because you can look at stuff that you didn't even know existed. Mm-hmm. There was like an episode of Password.
Yes.
And Bob Crane was on the show. Mm-hmm. And this guy had such charisma. He was a good-looking guy. But the lady who he was playing with, you're trying to follow body language. She couldn't stop touching him.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Password.
She's acting like a man. Yeah, she's acting like a man around a pretty woman. She was doing the same thing around him. And the guy.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, if you were a Hogan's Heroes fan, then and he was on, what was that other show of Donna Reed?
Oh,
right?
yes, the Donna Reed show. He was the neighbor.
And they always ask the question, because back in those days, I don't know if it's still true today, but actors in TV would make it seem like TV was the stepping stone to movies, and if you were good enough, you'd make it into movies. Well, then why wasn't he ever in a movie? Or was he? Maybe he was. Well, anyway, he died a horrible death. They found him bludgeoned, right? Joe knew him. Joe Martone's in the studio. Joe, you worked with him in a radio station for a little while? Did you?
Mm-hmm. He was just there for an interview, but the radio station he started with was WICC in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I got to meet the man, talk to him for a little while. But his author apparently dug into his life. But I've heard a lot of backstories that weren't for public consumption that he talked about.
Wow. Well, that is
of
cool.
his life.
That is
he
cool.
was an interesting, quote-unquote, character. And he did do a movie for Disney. Disney was grooming him.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Super Dad, I think, was the name of the movie.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
John Hook is on the phone. Let's introduce John. He is an Emmy Award-winning journalist. He's won more than a dozen Emmys for his reporting. He was named the Associated Press Anchor of the Year 5 times. He's covered every major story of the O.J. Simpson murder case to the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. He's an inductee into the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism Hall of Fame. My goodness, wow. Such an honor to have him on the show. He's written a book called Who Killed Bob Crane? The Final Close-Up. John Hook, good morning, sir. What an honor.
Hey, good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody. And you guys have done some research. You're absolutely right about Crane and his career. You've nailed it. Yes, his start in Bristol, Bridgeport for about 6 years. And yes, Disney was very interested in Bob Crane early on. Yes,
he had that look, right? He seemed like a nice guy, had a good look, but he ruined it for himself. Are we right in assuming, because anybody who knows that he died, he was making porno, right? Porno films?
He was. He was obsessed with photography, electronics, and women, and that was that's the fire. That's the fire that consumed him, frankly. I mean, and when he met John Carpenter on the set of Hogan's Heroes, who was a videotape salesman, home video before it was popular or even available to the general public, that's what kind of lit the fire when he met that guy.
And what do you mean lit the fire? As far as being...
Yeah, I mean, Crane was always kind of a womanizer outside of his marriage, and it just grew when he got out to L.A. at KNX Radio in L.A. He had a brilliant radio career out there. And then producers started taking notice of the comic genius of the guy on the radio, and then he started getting parts in television. But as his celebrity grew, his access to women, beautiful women, grew. And then this idea that he could not only photograph his sexual conquests, but videotape them as this technology became available was just a passion of his that swept him up.
Was he doing it for profit? Was he videotaping the sex to sell, or was it just for his own sake, for his own self?
It was for his own. It was for his own collection. He never wanted this to go public. You were talking about Disney being interested in him. His idol was Jack Lemmon. That's who he wanted to be. Jack Lemmon was the guy he looked for it and said, that's what I want to do. And Disney caught wind that he had this dark side and this dark obsession, and it really harmed his career late in life.
When you say Disney, do you mean Walt Disney or the company, or both?
The company. They were aware that he was doing some of this stuff, and it was starting to get in the way of his career.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, Disney doesn't want to touch any of that stuff.
No, exactly.
Just yeah. So how did you become interested in doing a story about who killed? And is it? Do we actually know who killed Bob Crane? Is that a mystery?
I leave it to the reader to decide. I lay out the forensics of the case, and I lay out our evidence, which was retesting the DNA evidence and the blood evidence in the case. We kind of climb back in the middle of this case, which has been a cold case now for over 20 years. John Carpenter, his friend who introduced him to home video, was put on trial in 1994 and acquitted, largely because there was no DNA evidence at the time. It was all inconclusive that Bob Crane's blood was found in John Carpenter's car after the murder. The police could not prove that the blood was actually from Bob Crane.
But there was blood.
There was blood, yes. In fact, Carpenter was hanging around Crane. He would visit him out on the road when Crane was performing in dinner theaters across the country. So Crane is found bludgeoned to death in an apartment here in Scottsdale in June of 1978. The same day he's discovered, Carpenter leaves town and heads back to Los Angeles. When they find his rental car, John Carpenter's rental car, they find blood stains on the inside of the car, 7 distinct blood stains. They test it. It tests positive for type B blood, which happened to be Bob Crane's blood type. I mean, you look at this and you go, wow. Listen,
really?
Yeah, and Crane's blood type, by the way, was type B, and it's only found in 9% of the population. So they felt they had their guy. But when he went on trial in 1994, the jury said, well, it's nice you've got type B blood, but how can you prove that that's Bob Crane's type B blood? And they acquitted John Carpenter. That's where we come in with our investigation, trying to figure out, can we get a definitive answer on DNA?
Wow.
20-some years later with better DNA technology.
And what's the answer? Can you? I mean, will somebody do this?
Well, they did it. We tested it at Bodie Cellmark Forensics in Lorton, Virginia, which did all the DNA testing for O.J. Simpson and John Benet Ramsey, one of the best labs in the world. They did the testing on the blood. We found it, retested it, and the finding was shocking. It was shocking.
It's Bob Crane's blood.
No, it was not.
Oh, it was not.
Wow.
No. Oh my gosh! Did I just ruin the end of the book?
Wow.
No. Because there are reasons, Larry, that this can happen. The blood, which had by that time been tested 4 times for DNA back in the late 80s, early 90s, the blood was no longer visible on the sample of the car door that we had. But we felt there was still cellular material there. So the testing comes back, and we're all expecting it to be Bob Crane's blood in John Carpenter's car,
right.
Case closed. The blood comes back, well, the testing comes back, and the DNA comes back, 2 profiles. One of an unknown male, not Carpenter or Crane, and another partial profile of another person, too degraded to positively know who that is, or really reach any conclusions from it. So I go into this pretty in-depth in the book, what could be happening, what may be happening with the DNA testing, because it's gotten... Sometimes now you are picking up things, DNA, that has nothing to do with the original crime.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know what to think now. So was he killed by himself, or was he with a woman when he got killed, and was she killed too, or no?
That is a great question, because the defense for John Carpenter said he was killed by a woman who was there having sex with him, and maybe wanted her videotapes back, or she was spurned. We don't know. Was a woman in that apartment with Bob Crane that night and killed him? What police do believe is that whoever was in that apartment was let in willingly by Bob Crane. It was someone he knew, someone he was comfortable with, because he was bludgeoned to death, probably with a camera tripod, while he was sleeping. He never knew what hit him.
Was he married?
And it was either Carpenter in his apartment, who he would have let in because they were friends,
Right.
or a woman, or someone completely unknown to police.
Okay, now I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but was he married to the lady who played? Oh gosh, the second
Fraulein Hilda.
Hilda.
the one who
Fraulein
played Hilda.
Hilda.
Thank you. Yeah, was he married to her?
Yes, he was. He was in the middle of a bitter divorce at the time Crane was murdered. So you can imagine that she became a possible suspect as well because there was money to be made. They were in the middle of a divorce. This was his second wife. He had met her on the set of Hogan's. They had a torrid affair for many years. Crane had also bedded the very first Fraulein Hilga. Little different spelling, Hilga. He had met her on the show the first year, and they were involved, and her husband found out about it and said, you leave the show or I'm leaving you. So she left the show after.
Oh, wow. He's messing with... Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And so I sort of kind of started to ask a question earlier of you. I mean, how did you become interested in this particular... Of all the stories you could have covered, this one, how did you... What attracted you to this? Were you like I was as a kid? You loved Hogan's Heroes?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then I came down to Arizona State University to go to college here, and I happened to arrive here the summer that the murder happened. So this has been with me my whole life. And Crane's apartment was a mere 7 miles from my dormitory in Tempe. So Crane, not only growing up, but then in countless reruns. As you guys know, this show was in heavy rerun rotation around the country. He's been with us for 50 years. I mean, he's still out there. You'll find him on television at night, and Hogan's is running. So it was really an interview, Larry, with Bob Crane's son, Bob Jr., in 2015. I interviewed him for a story, and after the story aired, it just stuck with me. I couldn't shake it. I thought, boy, this thing has no answers. Nobody really knows who killed Bob Crane. And I started thinking, could we find the original evidence in the case? Could we, more importantly, find the DNA evidence and the blood evidence and possibly retest it using modern DNA science and maybe get an answer once and for all about what happened here? That was the whole idea behind the book and the television stories I did on it too.
And it's truly amazing that all of that evidence would still be saved and cordoned off somewhere so you could have access to it.
They had to find it, and that was really difficult. That took months. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office down here, first of all, I had to get their blessing to even go down this road. It's highly unusual. I can't tell you how unusual it is that a reporter is given the permission to retest evidence in a cold case. That just does not happen. And the Maricopa County Attorney's Office down here, because of a long relationship I've had with these guys, I said, this is what I want to do. How do you feel about it? Will you help me with it? And the prosecutor down here, Bill Montgomery, he said, you know what? I am not afraid of the truth. If we can learn something more about this case through your efforts, I'm all for it. Even if it's not in a court of law, let's do it.
Wow.
And that's where we ended up.
Is John Carpenter still alive?
John Carpenter died 4 years after he went on trial. His wife, and I talk about it in the book, Who Killed Bob Crane, his wife actually called the Maricopa County Attorney's Office after he died. He died of a heart attack in Torrance, California at their modest home. He was tapped out. This had ruined his life, this suspicion about him killing Bob Crane. His wife calls the Maricopa County Attorney's Office the day he died and said, I hope you guys are satisfied. You killed him.
Oh, really? She believed it was but there was blood in his car, and we don't know who that was from. I mean, is it possible it was from a dog, or, not that he was killing dogs, but I mean, is it? Yeah. I mean, is there an explanation that it would be reasonable?
Not a great explanation. There are a couple of possibilities that someone who handled the car might have happened to be type B and bled in the car because it was a rental car. There could have been a mechanic. The car had some mechanical issues, and it was being serviced. It's possible somebody with type B bled in the car. It was also suggested by the defense that perhaps Bob Crane, who had been in the car a couple of times that week, might have had a cut finger and bled in the car. It wasn't a lot of blood. These were small smudges, streaks, and smears. But as you can imagine, highly, highly suspicious right on the heels of a murder.
Is Bob Crane Jr., was he the only child from Bob Crane, or were there other siblings?
No, there are 5 children. There are the 3 kids, Bob Jr. and his 2 sisters, 2 younger sisters from the first marriage to Ann Terzian, who was Bob Crane's childhood sweetheart, met her in Connecticut at high school. Then there were 2 other children, one from Fraulein Hilda, Sigrid Valdis, the actress, who was her child, and then Crane and Sigrid Valdis had a son, Scotty Crane, who was 7 when his father died.
Oh my gosh.
So how? Explain again how he died. It wasn't a gun. You said bludgeoned, or was he choked?
He was, well, there was a little of both. However, the main cause of death were 2 blows to the left temple of Crane's head. He was in a fetal position in bed, asleep. He never knew what hit him. There were 2 blows with a heavy instrument. It was believed to be a camera tripod from the inside of Crane's apartment. That was never found. This was one of the complicating parts of the case.
Really?
The murder weapon was never found. So this is one of the reasons prosecutors were reluctant to go on trial. They didn't have a murder weapon. They didn't have a witness. They didn't have a confession. Nonetheless, Crane was bludgeoned, 2 blows to the head, which were vicious blows. And all of this, by the way, is on my website, whokilledbobcrane.com. I set this up for a couple of reasons. 1, you can order the book there, but 2, we have crime scene video, crime scene photos, never before seen. And this stuff will help the reader understand the crime and all of the evidence that we look through. But yes, that's how he died. He was bludgeoned. He was also found with a cord tied around his neck. It happened to be cut from a video camera in the living room. That was tied around his neck. The pathologist the coroner believed that it was tied around his neck right at the moment of death. Maybe to silence him, because he may have been making some noise when he was dying.
Okay, so this is going to sound like I'm an amateur investigator. I'm not even amateur, but I'm just curious.
Hey, listen, Larry, throw it out there, Larry, because we've got so many theories.
No, I'm sure you touched. I'm sure I'm not bringing anything new to the table, but I have a question. Okay, if it was a camera tripod and a cord from a video recorder, that sounds like it's not premeditated. That's like somebody who was there used what was available.
That's exactly right. A crime of passion, and that's exactly what the murder scene looks like. But a crime of passion.
So there must have been some kind of an argument before he went to sleep. Otherwise, and whoever it was must have said, "Okay, go to sleep. I'll be waiting in the other room."
Well, that's a very interesting point. But there's no sign of struggle in the apartment, and there is, except for a photo album of naked women, there is nothing missing from Bob Crane's apartment. So robbery is not a motive. It doesn't appear that there was any fight, struggle, or anything. This was a crime of passion, yet it was planned insofar as much as, when Bob Crane goes to sleep, I'm going to whack him. And that's exactly what happened.
Was there any testing of the sheets themselves for residue, if there was a sexual encounter or anything, before he went to sleep?
Oh, good question.
Now, Robin is bringing new stuff to the table. No, this has happened. They actually tested all this. DNA was looked at, but remember, John Carpenter was in the car in Crane's apartment many times, so they would expect his DNA to be there. Mm-hmm. He had been with women in that bed, so because he had bedded many women during his stay in Phoenix.
Carpenter?
So no, Crane. Well, and Carpenter was in the apartment as well. They never, when Carpenter was out here that particular period, he never scored with a woman. He was striking out. Crane was doing pretty well on his own, and there's evidence that there's evidence that Crane was severing the relationship with Carpenter at the time he was murdered.
Well, maybe Carpenter wanted to be Bob Crane, so the only way he could do it would be to get rid of him if he actually did it.
Wow.
It's hard to know. It may have been because Crane was about to cut off this relationship. There's evidence that he was getting tired of Carpenter hanging around. That may have been the reason and the motive for Carpenter to kill him, if that's what happened.
Wow, it points to him a couple times, doesn't it? So
was Carpenter in custody, like for the next 16 years from the time of the murder till his trial, or was he allowed to roam free?
He was a free man. He was a free man, but he had a molestation charge out of California for molesting his stepdaughter's friend. So he was dealing with that in California, and they gave him time served on that in California, and then they brought him to Arizona to stand trial. So he was briefly in the Maricopa County Jail here awaiting trial. He bonded out as he was waiting for the murder trial in 1994. So he was not incarcerated down here very long, and after he was acquitted, he was a free man for 4 years, but then later died of a heart attack in California.
I'm looking at John Carpenter. I didn't know what he looks like. So as a younger man, he was not a bad-looking guy, but he's not Bob Crane. So no wonder he was striking out. He looks like Edgar Allan Poe a little bit.
He needed a wingman. John Carpenter needed a wingman.
Well, I think that's true. I think Carpenter was attracted to Bob Crane's celebrity, and Bob Crane provided women for Carpenter that Carpenter couldn't have gotten on his own. And hanging around Bob Crane, if you're hanging around Bob Crane and he walks into a bar in 1978, everybody's yelling Hogan, they all know him. This makes the pickings pretty easy for Bob Crane, and anyone who's with him gets the residual, right?
Oh, man, yeah.
That's kind of how it worked.
The way women must have responded to this guy was evident on that Password episode I was just talking about. He's got a lady who's not famous, and she's his partner, and she's touching him. She's like laughing, and she's touching him. And you think, oh my gosh, that's what men do.
Yeah.
Men do this.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, he was a magnetic guy and a really charming guy. And by the way, I know this sounds crazy. He was really a great family man. I mean, the kids absolutely adored this guy. When he was home, he was all in. He doted on the kids. Now, granted, he was working at a frenetic pace because at one time he was doing radio at KNX in LA and filming the Hogan's Heroes program. So he was just burning it at both ends and chasing women around. But when he was at home, he was really a loved father and really cared about those kids.
Yeah.
And this must have been a huge blow to the people that were in his true friend circle that didn't really want to see that side of him.
No doubt. And I think as it became known, there was a lot of discord, and it cost him his first marriage, to be sure. And later on, this is a lot of the reason that he and Patty were in the middle of a divorce. I mean, the womanizing had gotten out of control. This obsession with videotape and women really consumed him, and it was starting to cost him his career. As I mentioned, Disney was catching wind of this stuff, and they don't want any of that going on.
My next question, probably I should have asked earlier so you had more time to answer it, but I'm just curious about your feelings about him as you do the book. Just to try to give you a thumbnail sketch of my own, I loved the guy, was a fan. When I found out he was doing the porno thing and he got killed, I thought, oh my gosh, I used to like that guy. That's how I felt.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, I look at it a little bit differently. The women all knew, because I've looked at these videos and photographs. They're in evidence. It was purely research. And I am telling you, the women all knew they were being videotaped, and they were all on board. First of all, the equipment, the camera equipment that he was using looked like it fell off a Soyuz space capsule. I mean, this stuff is huge and bulky and awkward looking. You could not miss it in Crane's living room. So people who were in there knew exactly what was going on. He wasn't secretly recording this stuff. The women were all in on it. And in the videos I've seen, they are mugging for the camera, and they are enjoying being part of this because it's a novelty. These are the selfies before the selfie. This is long before Pam Anderson or Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian were making millions on sex tapes. Now, Bob Crane never intended these to be public, but people could argue that he was ahead of his time in some respects.
Well, certainly.
Well,
certainly.
Gosh, too bad. It's just so sad that he had to die. John, thank you for being on the air. It's an honor just to have you on the show. And the book is called Who Killed Bob Crane? The website is whokilledbobcrane.com?
That's right. And I that is a great place to order the book, but even better as a place to augment the book as you read it, because there's some really captivating crime scene stuff there. Never before seen.
Oh, gosh. I have a friend who's a big Hogan's Heroes fan. He's going to love this one. Thank you, John. Thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time with you, and I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the book.
Oh, my gosh. I can't wait till he gets here. We will take a little break. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. President Trump weighing in on the man who wants to chair the Democratic National Committee. Tweeting a short while ago, Representative Keith Ellison was the one who predicted early that I would win. Trump advisors, meanwhile, say a revised executive action on immigration will soon be coming. This is a day after new guidelines on immigration from the DHS.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says criminals will be the first to go.
Prioritizing the people who are here, who represent a threat to public safety or have a criminal record.
The government will hire thousands of new immigration officers.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. North Korea calling for the release of the women suspected in the murder of leader Kim Jong-un's half-brother.
Malaysian police naming 3 new suspects today, all of whom are men from North Korea, the first of whom is a diplomat.
Katie Stollard with Fox Sister Network Sky News. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Hi, can I have 2 steak tacos?
Flour or corn?
Oh, no tortillas. And no steak. Also add turkey, lettuce, and tomato. And just put it between 2 slices of bread.
You know this is a taco truck, right?
As a small business owner, you've got enough to deal with. Let the experts at Progressive insure your business so you can focus on whatever that was. With over 30 commercial, auto, and business coverage options, we'll build a plan that's right for you.
Oh, I'll have Swiss on that too. Thank you.
Visit progressivecommercial.com to get started. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
I know I need to earn my MBA if I want to move up. I'm looking for an MBA that offers unique concentrations. I want an online MBA that's top ranked, established. I care about the school's reputation because I know my